Hi fellas, this morning I've got a very serious subject, abortion genocide. Yeah, you'll be shocked at that word, won't you? Abortion genocide has been going on in the USA and UK for decades. They actually fool women, fool husbands, partners into thinking, oh, it's just like having it's not even like having a filling. Well, it's actually the way they do terminations, as they call them here, abortions, is absolutely barbaric. I mean, it truly is. It basically involves ripping the tiny baby to pieces. They usually use something called sofa clamps, which are somewhat similar to these. Yeah, they're somewhat similar to these, except they're longer, they're stainless steel, they're very thin to get up the vagina, and instead of just having slightly barbed teeth, they have sharp barbed teeth, and they basically tear the legs off, tear the arms off, tear the head off, and crush the skull with something, kind of a longer, thinner version of that, with very barbed clamp section, and they basically grab hold of the legs and rip the baby's legs and head off. That is how abortions are done. Earlier on they used the D&C, dilation and curettage, which is dilation and evacuation basically, and they used a special type of seaweed, laminaria I think it's called, that dilates the cervix, and they pull the cervix open gently and basically just poke around with a vacuum tube, a curette I think it's called, a vacuum tube, and suck out the little kind of 1 inch long fetus, and rip it to shreds. It's at least 10 times the power of a domestic vacuum cleaner. On the figures in the US, of course the US have only just woke up to this. I heard about the truth of it many years ago, well over 10 years ago, off a male nurse, and he was saying they basically rip it to pieces. I said, is it that bad? I said, yeah, they rip it to pieces, and they don't tell the women who are under local anaesthetic. They don't see the little tiny arms coming out, and then they reassemble the little baby parts to check they haven't missed anything, but they do sometimes. And there's a great many women are made sterile for life. They make a mistake when they're a teenager, and it doesn't matter how much they long for a child later on in life. They might be with the man of their dreams, they can never ever have a baby again, because it damages the womb so badly, this intense vacuum. You can imagine if it's powerful enough to suck a little baby in its sac into pieces, it's also quite often, and the placenta, it often sucks out big chunks of the womb as well, so they can never have a child again, which is a tragedy really, isn't it? Must be a tragedy for all them women, all those nurses and teachers and what have you. In the UK and the US apparently, for years this has been government policy. Yeah, I actually looked up. There's an organisation they have here called Sure Start, and this is meant to help people in poor communities. It doesn't really help them at all, because you can't trust them. All the health visitors are in there, in and out, looking for children to steal, literally steal from under the noses of the usually single mums or poor people. And I always recall when me and my partner were having our daughter, actually many years ago, we had this appointment at Wiston Hospital, local hospital, and I thought, what's this about, and I wanted to go with her, and my partner wanted me to go with her as well, because I'd heard about this government policy. And basically, despite, usually of course this woman would go on her own, her husband or man would be at work, or she'd be a single parent possibly, on a broken relationship, but this particular occasion, I think I took the afternoon off work, and I wanted to go with her, and she was happy with me to go with her. And actually the whole reason for this appointment basically was to try and persuade her to have an abortion, a termination. And I had this 30-something woman in this blue uniform, this nurse's uniform, and she basically ended up like debating with me whether it was a good idea to have children. I mean, she actually said that she'd had a kid when she was younger, and then must have got trained up to be a nurse with the help of babysitters and what have you. And she was saying, oh, it's not always easy. I said, well, no, it's not always easy, but you manage, especially if you've got somebody to help you. You manage, and you love your children, you bring them up. And she just went silent like that. She didn't know what to say. You know, the fact that she's on like £40,000 a year for recommending abortions to all these poor people, basically, which certainly she would class me as. You know, and they always, as we know, typical classism in the UK and the US, I've seen it in the US as well, they always look down, classism, hatred of the poor, hatred of people of lower social standing. This is, they always go on about racism, but classism is endemic in the US and the UK. It's quite obvious, even from looking at CNN bullshit fake news reports. They always try and look down on anyone that doesn't like welcome Islam, anyone that doesn't welcome mass immigration. Oh, you're just stupid racist. Well, actual fact, they're usually much more stupid than us, despite having been to university. The actual figures are genocidal. The abortion figures, there were in 2016, 195,000 women had terminations. Many of them, there's a great article in The Guardian recently, full details and a link to the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, who are a charity. Yes, none of it's done by the NHS, but they employ NHS nurses, NHS doctors, and it's all done by charities. You know, what a really sick charity. British Pregnancy Advisory Service, Mary Stopes UK, NUPAS and UPAS clinics, and Brook Advisory, Brook Charity. These are all money-making charities that pay their nurses, doctors, receptionists, etc. loads and loads of money to persuade the poor people to have their babies sucked out of them. Yeah, that's usually what they do. The D&C is the most common. I say as it goes on, the pregnancy goes on, it gets more and more savage. Basically, it goes from sucking the little tiny, 1 inch long or less baby and its pregnancy sac, out with a tube into little tiny pieces. If you Google aborted fetus, there's actually pictures of petri dishes with loads of little arms and legs and heads and all the little parts of our future, basically. Yeah, our future. The future kids, from whichever class they were from, are sucked out into little bits, and then they sell them. Or they've even been found in dumpsters, as you Americans call them, skips. They've even been found in garbage skips. Yeah. In that new film that's out, Unplanned, I've only seen the trailer, but it tells the truth of Planned Parenthood, and it actually shows them blessing like 3 or 4 50-gallon containers full of baby parts. And like the girl, what's her name, Abby someone, who blew the gaff on Planned Parenthood, actually admitted she'd been, connected with 23,000 abortions just in a few years with Planned Parenthood. 23,000 abortions. Of course, they do target the black people. Oh yeah, they target the black and the poor people are the ones they want to get aborted. And there's well-known pastors. It's called, it's Crusaders Against Abortion or something. A black group in America, and there's a really good pastor who comes on, and he actually states on a couple of videos I've seen, and it's true, the most dangerous place for a black man or a black baby, a black child in America is in the womb, because they've been targeted relentlessly through racism, racial hatred, wanting to keep the population down. And you can imagine it's vast numbers. There's proportionately far more mixed race and black fetuses, small babies. This term fetus, by the way, it just means Latin for tiny baby. So when you say fetus, just say tiny baby. It keeps you in touch with the fact that they are ripping them to shreds. Yeah. These Christian Crusaders Against Abortion, and there's some black pastors there, and they really speak well about it, because especially in like to Detroit and Florida and what have you, the poorer young girls have been targeted ruthlessly. The good thing is, in the UK at least, it's a slightly optimistic thing, and I'll always try and look for optimistic sides, is that most of the women having abortions are career girls, nurses, teachers. Stupid buggers are listening to this. It's not quite PC to have children. It was working class. It's poor to have sex and push out a baby, to push out our future. Yeah, it's really, it's looked at like almost criminal to actually give birth to a beautiful little child that's going to grow up into probably a loyal, great English citizen. Yeah, this is the thing. They've had these documentaries last couple of years. One of them on British TV. One of them was called Benefit Street, and it was basically looking at this street where only like one or two people in the whole street were working. But the thing is, you know, and a couple of them got crime and drugs problems, you know, which is probably true. In some areas this is true. But the thing is, it doesn't mean to say they won't bring the parents up, the children up, into being good, loyal people, good, hard-working people who might have careers. I mean, there's one girl I know quite well, and she's just 16, and she's from probably one of the poorest areas you can imagine, and she's constantly getting A stars, A star, like 95%, and she doesn't even have to revise. Her brain is so good, and she's one of these typical chav kids that they'd have you abort. Well, they do have them abort in vast numbers. If you want to look at the figures, in the First World War, going back a long time, but you know, it's relevant. In the First World War, England lost, I think it was 430,000 soldiers, and you know, the Canadians and Americans and the Australians and the Indians, they lost another 300,000. You know, they lost a terrible amount of people. Well, if you look at just the English section, about 430,000, we are having, in effect, the casualties of a World War One every 2 years. It's 190,000 abortions they're having, and it's gone up since them figures. And some of these women, it's usually older women, some of these women are having abortions secretly, without the husbands knowing, the partners knowing. 70% of them have partners. It's quite shocking, isn't it? And it's quite obvious, reading Net Mums, a well-known site, have a look at that, which I've been on for years, on and off, because I was a single dad for many years. On Net Mums, quite often it is the men pushing these women to have these oh, it's like having a filling. Well, you know, having a little tiny child sucked out of you and ended up possibly sterile for your life is not like having a filling. It can even end. Some of these clinics aren't even properly equipped. It's just a room with a suction machine, and if anything goes seriously wrong, and it has done, there's girls and women died from having abortions, especially if the operator is new or not properly trained. There's cases where it's this suction machine, massive suction machine, has ended up sucking through to the bowels, and they've ended up dying from it, or ended up with colostomy bags all their life, all for the sake of getting rid of an accident. Anyway, that's my rant done, but the figures are horrific. In America, it's 660,000 abortions, and it rises every year. The figures I quoted, it was 195,000, and they've doctored it since the first. It was 195,000 when they first published it. They've dropped it to 185,000. They've lost 100,000, like just in a few weeks. Work that one out. So every 2 years, just over 2 years, we're having the same casualties as we lost in World War One in the trenches, at Ypres and Passchendaele. That's shocking. And in America, you can imagine it will be above that. 660,000 abortions reported on every year, and it will be higher than that. You can guarantee fake news is covering a lot of that up. So whether you agree with abortions or not, I mean, obviously I tend not to, but what we should do, and what Live Action has been trying to do for the last couple of years, and you know, they've smashed Planned Parenthood, haven't they? Amazing. We need this to happen with the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, Mary Stopes, all these money-making charities where these nurses having big houses and driving, you know, and getting rid of the husbands and keeping great big houses and big families and driving around in Audis by keeping these girls and women in ignorance of the brutality and the barbarity that they're doing to their unborn. We need to start valuing our unborn. Strange thing is, the same people, the same like far left, like classist snobs, middle class snobs, all on 40, 50, 70,000 a year. These are the same people that are trying to drag in all these migrants who have like 5 and 7 kids, and 9 out of 10 times never work and are never loyal to us. It's the same gang of people. The Labour, left wing, far left, teachers, the nurses, these health visitors especially. I mean, especially up northern UK, they go out of their way to set up parents and steal their kids. I mean, it's like a plague. It's a growth business. The local councils get about £2 million for every kid they steal off some naive single mum or poor people, because because these health visitors are there to help them, aren't they? Yeah, help steal the kids. I've had personal experience of them. They're utter toe rags. Do not trust these health visitors as far as you can throw them, especially if you're from a poor background or you're not on great wages. You cannot trust them. Don't sign anything. Never sign a CAF. CAF allows them to look into your doctor's records, find any little chink in your armour and say, oh, there's a chance of future abuse, we'll take the kids. And they do, because you've got no intrinsic right to look after your kids in the UK, unlike in Ireland and in France. Loads of people have run off. The state is far too powerful, and it tells far too many lies. Okay, just my little rant over. Okay, so look into this. We really need to start cracking down on these abortion liars, these abortion profiteers, because it's just destroying our culture and importing an alien, hateful, barbaric one that all started in the 7th century from a mass murdering thief. Yeah, good old Mo. Yeah, good old Mo, the butcher of Saudi Arabia. That should be his proper title. Okay. See you guys. Bye bye.